Welcome to the Inspired Impact Podcast, where dedicated female professionals share how they inspire impact every day. Authentic stories, passionate commitment, lives transformed. I'm your host, Judy Carlson. Welcome to today's episode of the Inspired Impact Podcast. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to an author who writes faith by day and mystery by night. I love one of her taglines that says, "Great mystery, real history." I can attest to that because I met her through her mystery series that I'm currently reading. I'm so excited to introduce you to Patricia Raybon. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here with you, Judy. Thanks so much for inviting me.
So let's start by talking about, where did you get started, Patricia? What inspired you throughout your journey to pursue the path you're on now? How has it allowed you to make an impact on your field? I can't wait to hear your story.
Well, I love the question. And when people ask me how I became a writer, the first answer is that I loved being a reader. From my earliest years, I loved reading those first grade readers, and maybe we were reading a little in kindergarten too. But I loved the experience of diving into a story. And by the time I got in third grade, I was writing my own stories, and I had a third grade teacher, who asked me one time if I said, "Patricia, when you grow up, do you want to be a writer?" And my eyes lit up and told her, yes, yes. And then, Judy, she said, "You are a writer." Can you imagine her teacher affirming that dream in a child who at that point I might have been 7 or 8 years old. But when my very first book was published, and I had my first book signing, I invited her, my former third grade teacher, to be my special guest at that book signing. So it started early like that. But there's another part of the story. I went on to earn degrees in journalism with the support of my parents, who never said to me that aspiring to be authorship was, a crazy idea. They just always supported it. So I earned my first degree in journalism, started working at the Denver Post in the newsroom on the city desk. And one day I noticed a note on the bulletin board announcing a position in the features department. And that then, at that point, I think it was called lifestyles at that point. But, think of it as human interest writing, if you're not familiar with the term news feature writing. And I wanted to move up in my career. And so you've heard that phrase that little hinges open big doors.
Amen.
And I remember standing there in that newsroom, that busy newsroom, people going here and there and typing up their news stories, and photographers moving around and rushing around. And I was so young, really young, just out of college. And but I did submit my name, and I was selected for the position. So I literally went upstairs to work in features, where I went from writing about facts to also writing about feelings. And I didn't know at the time, but the experience of diving into life and people's issues and problems in a news feature way turned out to be a great foundation for the kind of writing I'm doing right now, which is writing novels. So I didn't see it at the time. I also didn't know that my faith experience, which I grew up in the church, if you've ever heard somebody use that phrase. So from an early age, the first thing I learned about the Bible was through stories. We used our teachers used what we called felt boards, and we'd have the characters on the felt boards, and so all of these things were saying to me that putting down life experiences in the form of a story was a divine, if you will, and appropriate thing to do, and an exciting path to take. So that's my long answer to the question of how I got started. All of those things combined were operating to tell me that stories matter, and that I could make a life and a living telling stories, my own stories through memoir, first-person essays, and then through the stories of other people. I remember, just to finish this thought, when I was in the features department, it was during the time when long-form journalism was very popular. And so we were encouraged to write these long page one Sunday stories. If you remember when the Sunday newspaper used to be a really big product and a big deal. And so we would write these. I wrote for the Sunday magazine at the Denver Post, and at some point became editor of the Sunday magazine at the Denver Post. And then during the week, we would write feature stories. I wrote one time called Grandmothers Too Soon. And it was about women who had had babies as young teenagers, maybe 12 or 13 years old. And then when they were in their 30s, their children were having children. And so that feature story explored the lives of young women who were exploring the experience of being what they called grandmothers too soon. So that was the kind of story that we would present, explore, report, and present. And I never ever felt like going to my job every day. I never felt like I was going to work. I just loved feature writing. Later, when I went left the news business, I went up to the University of Colorado and taught for years, 15 plus years. And I taught not just news reporting, but I taught feature writing, feature reporting, profiles, how to write a memoir, news profiles. And I just feel very grateful to have landed in this life path that has allowed me to do this work in writing formats that I enjoy so much, including mysteries. Love the genre, just love it.
When you were in the features department, are you the only one that was responsible for coming up with the ideas of what you were going to explore and write about? Or were there a lot of people who were, Patricia, this would be a great idea, or Patricia, have you ever thought of this, or have you explored this idea? Because Grandmothers Too Soon is a phenomenal article title with an amazing story. But how would someone even think of that?
Well, all of the all of the ways you just described are part of the work. And in fact, when I was at the university teaching in the School of Journalism, early in the semester, there was always a lot of efforts spent on how to come up with good stories. The one answer is to pay attention to life. And so I would assign my students to come back a week later with 3 to 5 solid story ideas based on observing what's going on around them in their environment, talking to people they know, listening to suggestions. Editors who know their writers would say, "Oh, this sounds like a Pat Raybon story," for example. And so they would make that suggestion. And then as readers began to know a journalist byline and see your stories in the paper frequently, then they would say the same thing. "I saw your article on such and such. I thought you might be interested in this other thing." And then, of course, a big part of it was being able to come in every week. And we would have story meetings. It seems to me we'd have story meetings on Monday mornings. And we would, as a staff, sit down, share our story ideas. If a reporter had an idea but needed sources, they would ask, I'm doing a story on grandmothers too soon. Does anybody know anybody who would be a good resource for that story? So we would share resources with one another, and then just get out and beat the bushes. And all of those things together led to, great story angles and great story ideas. And I was talking to a young man just this week. His grandmother asked him, he wants to be an author, and his grandmother asked him to call me. And so I said to him, one way a writer knows what to write about is to think about their own life, their own identity. Who are you? And so I talked about all the people I am. And I teach this when I teach memoir too, but I am a Westerner. I grew up in Colorado, for example. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a sister, a neighbor. I'm all of those relational things. I'm African American. I am now a woman of a certain age. And oh gosh, it's a long, long list. I'm a sibling, just many things. And I have written in all of those voices. I've done a lot of mom pieces, a lot of wife pieces, a lot of faith pieces. I mentioned I grew up in the church. And so I was saying to this young man, if you know who you are, all of your writing identities, all your writing voices, you'll never run out of things to write about. But a big part of it is writing is paying attention to life, to living, to what's happening in the world, to what's not happening in the world but should be happening, to what gives you joy, what makes you angry, fearful, all of those human things. And those are the things that have inspired me over the years to keep at it. At one point, being an author is a tough job. At one point I thought, well, maybe I'll sell real estate. Maybe I'll get a real estate license. I don't know where I got that idea. And because I know where I have an author friend who did leave publishing and got her real estate license and is actually doing well as a realtor. But as I sat down with myself, I understood that was a worthy vocation and life path, but that I wanted to honor the main path that I've been called to. And in fact, Judy, it's interesting. I'm actually a landlord. My sister and I rent our late mother's home. So I ended up a little bit in real estate anyway. But I know that my calling is to write. In addition to writing mystery novels, I also am a regular contributor to our Daily Bread Ministries, which publishes globally their daily devotional. And so I have that devotional writing to do as well. That is heavily informed by my background growing up in the faith context. Mm-hmm. And so I put the real estate license idea on the back burner and am continuing to write. And the world and people in it inspire me every day.
I have so many notes and things that are so important. You have taught me so many life lessons in just the short time we've been together, but so many of us, when we're asked, who we are, what we do, we identify with one thing, and that's the job at hand that we're doing on a daily basis. And so to take a space of time and get in touch with who you are. You said one day I sat down with myself and I realized that these other things are very worthy professions, but I want to honor the path that I've been called to. How many people really figure that out and life passes them by and they never figure it out? And I'm just so honored to learn that from you today.
Yes, I think that may be true for a lot of people. When I first went up to the university, on the first day, I would always invite my students to say who they are. And typically, they might say, I'm Patricia Raybon. I'm a sophomore from Denver, Colorado. They might say that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would say, yes, but who are you? Who are you really are? Who really are you? That seems right. And so then they would, and I say to them, it's just us in this room. This is a writing space, and it's a safe place. So tell us who you really are. Mm-hmm. And they would then start to think about it. And I remember having a student say, I'm the daughter of hippies. My parents, I grew up in the mountains with my parents. We barely had running water, and so, so that kind of answer. And another young lady said, I am the child of divorce. My parents broke up when I was 5 years old, and it has been made the biggest impact on me than anything else. And so as they began to safely say and seize on what life has given them, mm-hmm. then they began to identify their own writing agendas. Mm-hmm. And so, but before, if we're not invited to do that, mm-hmm. A lot of us may not ever do that. Like the young man I was talking to just the other day, I said, one thing I know about you is that you are a sibling. He's the oldest of 4. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, you could write out the rest of your life about that. Mm. And, what those experiences have been like. And then he told me about sports he had played in college, and sports journalism is a place where some of the best writing, journalistic writing, occurs. Mm. And so we talked about sports journalism and what he could do with that. So to reply to your point, for each of us, when we say to ourselves, what makes me different than all the other thousands, millions, billions of people who are out there? What makes me different from all those other people? Then we can begin to find out, in a business way, our brand, what sets us apart. And then what we have to offer to the world because of that difference. Mm-hmm. And first, it's matters to me as an African American woman. I always need to talk about the fact that I grew up under Jim Crow segregation in the 50s. And when I say that, Judy, I am telling my age when I say that. But it is a part of who I am.
Yeah, it is.
And so when people don't want, they're saying, oh, don't talk about race or don't talk about Black history. What they're saying is don't talk about who you are. And, or, put a sock in it. And writing says, you'd better talk about who you are. And boldly and bravely, even when people don't want you to. I spoke at a high school about a year ago, and a young woman raised her hand in the back, and she said, what if people in your family don't want you to write about something that you want to write about? And so I said to her, when people don't want us to write something, that's the thing we need to write about most.
I love that. Yeah, exactly.
We do live with other people, in life. So I said, what the writer has to do is sit down first and do the work, do the writing, and to the best of your ability, but then share it with those people who are afraid of what you want to say. And that happened with my sister. I have one sibling, older sister. And my first book, a nonfiction book called My First White Friend, was my 10-year project. I needed to get a book published in order to get tenure at the university. And so I decided to write a reflection on making peace with white America. That was my idea. But when I wrote it, it turned out that there was all this unfinished business in my own family. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to write that too. Mm-hmm. And my sister was very upset with me. She said, why are you writing all this stuff about us? But once I wrote it and showed her what I wrote, then she said, oh, now I understand. I understand why this was something that you just could not let go. You had to write about these things. And she became a huge cheerleader for the book. I ended up on the Today Show with that book.
Oh my gosh, I want to read it.
Yes, it's still in print.
Okay.
25 plus years. And so, in fact, one of the suburban Denver libraries emailed me just this week and said one of their noontime book clubs is reading that book, and they invited me to come talk about it. So think if I had just said, oh, I better not write this. Mm-hmm. I said to that young lady, that young student in high school, those are the things that writers have to challenge themselves to sit down and write, especially when somebody's saying, oh, you shouldn't write it.
Right.
That's usually because it needs to be said.
Right. When you started writing your more recent mystery series,
yes,
how did you choose the time frame, what was going on in Denver at the time? How did all of that come to be?
I was, well, in two ways. I've always loved the mystery genre from the Nancy Drew days. I've been a reader and lover of, and a fan of mysteries, especially clergy mysteries, again, because of the church experience. So I love the Father Brown mysteries, for example. For those who may be familiar with the G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown mysteries that are dramatized on Masterpiece on PBS. And so in my mind, and I love fiction. And as a journalist and as a nonfiction author, I wanted to, felt a hunger to learn how to write a fictional story. You know, because I'd spent all these decades writing nonfiction. But that has taught me that if I had learned to do that, I could learn to write fiction. And so I wanted to try that. In the meantime, as a Coloradan, someone who grew up here, I had become aware of the history in my state of the Ku Klux Klan. In the 1920s, Colorado had the second highest Klan membership per capita of any state in the U.S. The first was Indiana, the state of Indiana. So this is the second iteration of the Klan, which started in the 1800s, and then after World War I in the 1920s, under the disguise of Americanism, the Klan took off again, by saying all these outsiders, Black people, Jewish people, Catholic people, essentially non-white Protestants, are not true Americans. And so the Klan just became very popular. And so that was really never taught in Colorado history when I came through public school. And so, but there were some really good books about the Klan. So I had just been reading about how that had happened in Colorado. And then I thought it would be interesting to place a fictional detective in that era of the 1920s in Colorado. And so it all started to sort of take shape and come together. And then during the pandemic, I said to my husband, since we were all isolated and, for that very curious time of the pandemic, I said to my husband, what if I use this time to finish this mystery that I've always been thinking about and working on? And I finished the first one. My agent really liked it, and my nonfiction agent really liked it, and he sold it very quickly. And then my publisher asked me if I could turn it into a series, because mystery readers often really love mystery series. So I went from wondering if I could finish a mystery to having to write 3 of them, because I got a 3-book contract. But, faith is a mystery. The Apostle Paul has a statement where he says, now we see through a glass darkly. He's talking about how we can't see on the other side of life. We can't see what's on the other side of heaven. We can't see that. So he says, now we see through a glass darkly. And that's one of many mysteries that the Bible talks about. And so I love the invitation that a mystery gives to explore, to search out truth. That's what detective stories do. They search out truth. What's the truth? Here's a situation. Usually it's a murder. Clearly the worst crime against another person. So here's this crime. What's the truth of this? What happened and who did it? And Agatha Christie, of course, one of the iconic authors of the golden age of mysteries, says that everybody in the mystery story is hiding something, not just the villain. And so the detective then, knowing that, is trying to uncover truth, everybody's truth, including, in my case of my mysteries, including my character's own truth. What is her? She's asking a question about herself and about her faith. And so it becomes a lot more than a whodunit. It's there's a lot more to offer a reader in a mystery than who did it.
Right. Wow.
The ultimate question is, what's the truth about myself? I think that's why people. I hope that's why people are enjoying the stories.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And have you uncovered truth about yourself through writing about your detective in this series?
Yes. One of the intriguing things about writing fiction is that it's heavily dependent, especially popular fiction, like the mystery genre, heavily dependent on a protagonist who has the guts to do things most of us wouldn't ordinarily do. Because, if you invest in a book and in reading a whole book about a character, we want to read about people who are courageous and brave and, are out there fighting the world. That means the author has to challenge herself to write a character who's like that. And so in making my character a lot tougher than I am and a lot more determined than I am, and I'm willing to go into dark places and open doors on scary things. I've learned that, I can do that, some of that too. I can today talk to Judy, even though my desktop wasn't connecting this on Zoom. I can pick up my phone and in this digital age, when I wasn't born into the digital age, is new to me, but I can try these new, hard, scary things too. And I was talking to one of my granddaughters. She's in high school, and she loves to write too. And I said, I never knew that about writing fiction, that the character you create turns around and teaches you things about yourself. I didn't see that coming, Judy.
Wow, that's amazing. So thought-provoking. We should all go out and write about protagonists, right? And you mentioned your granddaughter who loves to write. I was going to ask you about your writing legacy. You mentioned you have 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren. Is that right, Pat?
That's right. Yes.
So they have observed you all of their lives writing.
Yes. And all of them love to write. In fact, I wrote a book with my younger daughter. Our younger daughter converted to Islam right before 9/11, when she was in college. And so that matters because, as I said, I grew up as a follower of Christ. I all of us have different faith systems, but so for me to have a daughter who converted to Islam then presents me with a problem, which writers know means it's time to write. And so she is now a middle school principal, but at the time she was teaching in the grade school levels, and language arts was one of the things she was teaching. And I had always read her writing. I knew she was a strong writer. And Judy, we were really struggling with this faith choice that she made. And because it demanded of my husband and me that we become this interfaith family. And I wasn't trying to do that. I didn't know, as people say, I didn't see that on my bingo card. And but we had argued about it for too long. And it was a hurtful thing for us. And so I said to her, what if we wrote a book together to examine this standoff, this challenge that we have, and try to write our way through it to the other side. And at the time, I wasn't thinking of it as an opportunity of legacy, but I believe now that you describe it that way, I suppose that it is, because we did write a book called Undivided, a Muslim daughter, her Christian mother, their path to peace, and ended up on the Today Show with that book.
Oh, wow. You're amazing. Both of you? Were both of you on the Today Show?
Yes.
Oh, yes. My gosh.
So, when we do the writing we're supposed to do, that's, those kind of doors can open. And, but the fact that we did that writing then has said to others in the family that, writing is a real profession. It's a tough one. It's tough to make a living as an author. And so I'm hoping that my grandchildren will identify other professions, and then out of those professions, maybe they still can go back to the writing that they really do love.
Right.
And
yeah.
So, but if they decide to do that, they will have had the experience of journeying with me on the path.
Wow. I just went back to something you said in the beginning regarding your daughter and the book you wrote together, Little Hinges Open Big Doors. And wow, to open that door together, I can't even imagine. But another thing you said is, let's write our way through this. And such incredible lessons. Well, I could talk with you for hours, Pat. You just are fascinating. You have so much inspiration for me today and for our listeners. And wow. So, I think for people who are interested, tell us a little bit about, you've got a website, you've got books people can read. Are you still teaching at the university? You're speaking to, I'd love to come and hear you speak sometime. I just need to know where they are and when they are.
Well, the best way to find out what I'm doing is to go to my website, patriciaraybon.com, and click on the little invitation to follow, get my book news. And so I try to send out an email note every month or so. And on the note, I provide updates and tell people where I'm speaking, and any book news that I might have. And I have some giveaways. And so that's a good way that's the best way to keep up with me.
Great.
Yes.
And then get reading the Patricia Raybon Mystery Series. It's fabulous.
It's available. It's my publishers just made it available pretty much anywhere and everywhere books are sold, and the libraries have it. It's on an audio format, hardback, paperback. There's a large print edition that's now available. So it's readily available in all convenient formats. And I am honored. I got in the past couple of days just such really nice email from people saying, I just finished Truth Be Told, or I just finished Double the Lies, or one of them, and I enjoyed it so much. When's the next book? You know.
So if you're doing a 3-book series for that, then do you know what you're going to be writing next yet?
I am under contract for a World War II spy novel that's in at a Black finishing school in North Carolina, and so that's a standalone.
Okay.
And because I wanted to try one, I told my editor in a Zoom call the other day that I didn't really appreciate until now that a standalone truly has to stand on its own.
Okay.
It's a challenging writing assignment, but I'm enjoying that. And then I'm hoping that I can return to the Annalee Spain series, because I really, really love the character, and there are more things she needs to do.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait. Yeah, she's quite a character that you wrote about. My goodness, I love her in the stories.
Thank you.
Oh, well, this has been absolutely my pleasure and so delightful. Thank you so much for taking time with me today and sharing your inspiration, and just love it, Pat. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. It's been an honor to be your guest. My kindest thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us for the Inspired Impact Podcast. To listen to past episodes, please visit theinspiredimpactpodcast.com.